guardian that's called a conservator that takes care of the money. And for a multitude of reasons, that's kind of the preferred way that we do things. Because if you get into a scenario where the person that you've chosen to take care of the kids is also the person that you've dumped all the money on and said, use the money to take care of the kids, I guarantee you're going to get into conversations like, you know, Dad always said when I turned 16 he was going to get me a Corvette. And you need to honor those wishes because, you know, that was our big thing, me and Dad, was Corvettes. Or, you know, a multitude of other arguments that can cause. If you have that parsed out into two different people, our experience has been that it separates a lot of the drama, especially if there's a significant amount of money involved here. And, you know, I come from blue-collar roots, and I'm not, you know, somebody who expects to get a big inheritance or anything like that. You think, oh, you know, it's not going to be that much money. But if you start talking about life insurance programs, and if something has happened to both you and your spouse, and you're looking at a couple of life insurance policies that have been cashed out, that's a pretty significant chunk of money that can go to those kids. And they're going to know about it. And they're going to know that the person who's taking care of them has all this money that's for them, and they're going to want fancy clothes, and they're going to want a car when they're 16, and they're going to want. And if you can separate that out into two different people, then it's so much easier for the guardian who's taking care of the kids to go and say, hey, look, I love the idea of getting you a Corvette. I would totally do it if I could afford it, but you've got to go talk to Uncle Mike because he's in charge of all the money. And Uncle Mike doesn't have to live with you, so he has no problem saying no. You know, that's for college, that's for, you know, training, that's for your health and maintenance if something goes wrong with your health, and we're going to take care of those things, but we're not going to buy you a car. And then they can storm and get upset and do whatever they're going to do in their teenage years against that person without affecting the relationship of, between them and the guardian. Do you see how beneficial that can be? Mm-hmm. The court can do that, but my experience has been, especially in Ada County and Canyon County, is that they just don't. They're going to find one person. They're going to feel lucky if they find one person that's, you know, fairly stable and able to take care of the kids, and they're going to say, go with it. Give us a call if you need any help. But it's not going to be anywhere near as personal as if you set it up beforehand. Okay? And we can kind of guide you through that process and show you some examples of how to select a person that will be good for each of those roles, and then how to communicate with them before anything happens to you so that they know what's expected of them and what it means that you've asked them to be a guardian. That's been especially difficult in our family. We have 5 children, and finding a guardian who's excited about taking on 5 kids in addition to their own family is not the easiest thing we ever did. But there are ways that you can make that easier for folks, and that's one of the things that we help people with. Next slide. Some of the legal requirements for what you've got to do for a guardian, as you're thinking about this, is they have to be 18 years old or older. Some people think it's got to be somebody that's your own age that knows, you know, everything that you know about your kids, that sort of thing. Doesn't necessarily have to be that. You know, if you've got an aunt that's younger than you, or a sister that's an aunt to your kids that's younger than you, that's, you know, willing and able to take on the role, maybe doesn't have any of their own kids, that sort of thing. As long as they're over 18 years old, it's acceptable under the law, and maybe it's a good option for you. You're looking at people that are concerned for your children's welfare, and that care about them, and have some of the same values that you share. They've got to be physically able to handle the job. A lot of folks put down their parents to take care of their kids, and we've got more and more grandparents raising kids these days, but sometimes you don't think, hey, my kids are 5 and 6 years old, grandma's going to have 15 years of raising these kids before they move on. And maybe they're going to be physically able, maybe not. Do they have time for it? Do they work in a full-time job? Do they travel? Do they have children of their own, you know, or have they had children that are similar ages that they can relate to? Do they have enough assets to raise your children? And if not, can you provide the assets? That's one of the things a conservator can do, is to provide supplemental income from your life insurance policies or from your assets, and say, hey, look, I understand that you don't have enough rooms in your house to take on 5 kids or whatever it is, but I can supplement with $1,000 a month to let you buy a bigger house that has enough rooms to accommodate everybody. Moral beliefs, you know, do they go to the same church? Are they interested in the same education levels? Are they interested in the same things that you value? And can you keep all of your kids together in one place, or do we need to look at having them go to separate homes? All strategies that we can work with you on, but difficult decisions. And if you're struggling with any of this morning, trying to think, how am I going to, match all that up? Think of how difficult it would be for a judge to figure that out without having any knowledge of your family or your relatives or your friends or the people that you would have in mind to do this kind of stuff. So better to get it done now than to wait. All right, next slide, Brian. Conservator's the money person that we talked about. One of the problems that we run into on a pretty regular basis is divorce. It's 50% of all families go through a divorce. Now you're in a position where if you pass away and you've got children from a former spouse that you're divorced from now, and there's a good reason that you divorced them, it's a pretty daunting prospect to think that the judge, when he starts looking around for a conservator, the first person he's going to look at is, well, hey, they've got a parent that's still alive. And so dad or mom, ex-dad or mom, is going to be the prime candidate to take all of your money, under the prospect of it being for the children, but they're going to give all that money to your ex-spouse who you divorced because they're so bad with money and say run with it. And when they turn 18, it's going to go straight, directly to the kids. So better solution is to appoint somebody other than your ex. Some people come to me and say, hey, I want my ex out of the picture altogether. I don't want him to even take care of the kids, so I'm going to appoint a guardian and a conservator that are not him or not her. The guardianship is a little bit trickier because they still have custody of the kids in most cases, so there's not a lot you can do about that unless they go with you or before you. But as far as that money's concerned, you're in a lot safer position if you can pick a family member that you trust that isn't the ex. Okay. Next slide. Speaking of kids, the next big issue is how do the kids get your money if you inherit or you leave an inheritance, say, from life insurance? And let's pick just a $100,000 life insurance policy, which I think is pretty common among people. You pass away and you leave $100,000 to your 5-year-old. They can't legally own property. So a guardian or conservator is going to be appointed, and the first thing the judge will do is say, do they have a person appointed in the will? We'll give that money to them, and they'll take care of it for the kids until they turn 18. But by default, when you turn 18 as a kid, you get that money outright, no restrictions, no questions asked, whatever's left of that money, and the conservator can only spend it for the kids' benefits. So it's not like they've taken it and spent it on themselves. Most of it should be there, and if they've invested it, it should be even bigger. But when that once 5-year-old turns 18 years old, that money all goes straight to their pocket. And this is a huge crisis for a lot of families, and I've seen this go south so many times where the kids inherit this boatload of money. Well, to them it's a boatload of money at 18 years old, and that's the time in their life when they should be thinking about getting into school to go to college. They should be thinking about starting a career so that they can develop some work experience, all those kind of things that are important for a kid that age to start getting into. And instead what they're doing is they're taking trips to Europe or Las Vegas. They're buying Corvettes. They're thinking, hey, I've got enough money to last the rest of my life. This is going to last forever. And in reality, what it does is it lasts about 5 or 6 years, and then it's completely gone. And they've got no experience with how to manage the money. They've got no experience with how important it is to get their lives established during those years. And so what they do is they end up on the tail end of their college years with no money, no work experience, nothing to show for it, and the money's completely gone. And they're starting over from scratch at age 24 or 25 or 26 instead of 18 years old like most kids do, and they're way behind everybody else. And I've seen this happen so many times. My stepdad, his family went through this, and it was just really difficult. And it can devastate the kids. And there's really no way to avoid this without a will. And so when we're talking about what we want to do with this kind of problem is that you've got to write into your will some restrictions on how the money's going to go to the kids. Okay? The best solution is to leave your assets in a trust until the kids can get old enough to manage it properly. And when I say trust, a lot of people kind of think, oh, rich people, really expensive, really complicated. But you can create a fairly simple trust in your will that says, when I die, create a trust, which basically means a separate bank account. And I want Uncle Mike to be in charge of that account. Whoever the conservator was can continue to manage that money. And I want him to watch the circumstances and see how things develop with my kids.